Let's start off this video with a question from a viewer. Dear Jamie, I have been diagnosed with terminal ligma. My doctor has said that the easiest way to ease my pain is with a video where you talk about S-Bahn systems outside of Germany again. On a bonus note, and this is an important one, all but one of them must be from a country not featured in your seminal 2024 video, S-Bahn networks outside of Germany. With love, Huge Ass, age 37. Whoa, young Hubert, I'm happy to make your wish come true. TFTSB is made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you. Now, I've actually had several requests to tackle this topic again, though there are a few caveats. First off, the two most requested cities to look at and determine if they have S-Bahn networks are Philadelphia and London, and I do have plans to look at those individually in their own deep dives. And second off, instead of 10 countries like last time, I'm only looking at 5. And the first one is the repeat because it's a country I just visited, and if I use footage from that trip, then it legally becomes possible for said trip to be a tax write-off. Anyways, let's talk about some S-Train and potential S-Train networks around the globe. Liège, Malige, bacon. Gay. Hello and welcome to Liège, Belgium. Please ignore the Brussels footage. I totally didn't forget to actually get footage from Liège, forcing me to compensate with stock images and footage from Brussels, since they use similar rolling stock. Belgium actually has a few S-Bahn systems, and some of them even cross over with each other. Brussels, Ghent, and even Liège here. This incredibly new system, resulting in a bunch of Belgian L trains being rebranded in 2018. This network consists of 4 lines, S41 through S44. However, what makes it truly special is its border crossings, though they may not seem obvious at first. The RE18 line, which used to have an S-Bahn designation until mid-2024, actually runs between Liège, Aachen in Germany, and Maastricht in the Netherlands. However, both the S41 and S43 still serve Aachen, with the S43 being a more express service and operates using Stadler Flirt in multiple units instead of the locomotive-hauled trains mostly used on the rest of the routes. Just don't mind the fact that some stations are only served hourly. The S-Train routes to Aachen are also pretty interesting, as they're only classified as S-Trains by Belgian rail authorities and only really called so up until the German border. After crossing into Germany, the number changes to RE29, making this route both a regional line and an S-Bahn line all in one. Something that actually does happen on occasion in Germany. It actually used to happen on the S1 to S-Bahn Mittelelbe until a few years back. It really shows how arbitrary what we call things are, huh? On one more note, like in Brussels, this route is sometimes referred to by the French moniker RER. When both German and Dutch, it's usually just called S-Train, or I guess S-Train. I can't speak Dutch. I can barely speak German. Mean that, for those confused, RERs are just French S-Bahns. Take that, Paris, I guess. I will die on this hill. Moving on, let's go to Stockholm. Stockholm actually has a special place in my heart, being the first city I ever went to in mainland Europe. I didn't spend much time in there, but I was there long enough to grab a snack and use a bathroom at the airport, so I'd say it counts. Welcome to the Stockholm's Pendeltag, a name derived from a word that I can only assume is like the word pendulum, you know, like on an old clock. With 7 lines and 53 stations stretching over 240 kilometers, routes here aren't even given S numbers, but are rather just numbered 40 through 48, with all routes sharing a central trunk through Stockholm proper, giving the center of the network much higher frequencies than the outlying towns. Very traditional S-Bahn indeed, it seems. While the Stockholm commuter rail lines have been in service since 1968, they haven't been without their issues. Clearly not realizing that such a plan would cause nothing but headaches everywhere else it had been tried in Europe. In the year 2000, operations of the network were handed over to private companies who would compete for operations tenders every few years. Where have I heard that before? In 2016, this contract went to MTR, as in the literal operator of the Hong Kong MTR metro system. As legendary as Hong Kong's transit is though, it seems MTR didn't do a great job in Stockholm, of lots of cancellations and service issues. This culminated in an emergency meeting in Stockholm in 2023 when MTR was relieved of their 10-year contract, with Swedish national operator SJ taking over the following year. This is my obligatory story about why privatizing important services is bad and serves nobody except for rich stakeholders who probably don't even take transit anyway.
Oh, that's right. Barcelona.
Let's shift away from the Dick and Balls Peninsula to the Iberian Peninsula. Welcome to sunny, beautiful Barcelona. Very specifically today, we're talking about the Rodalies Barcelona, often called the Barcelona Suburban Trains in English, or even, believe it or not, Barcelona S-Trains for short. I'm very fortunate to have family living in Spain, and I must say Spain really punches so high when it comes to transit. Well, except for a lot of their regional train lines, and also, like, I get why they put airport-style security checks on the high-speed trains, but is it really necessarily in the modern day? Isn't one of the big perks of taking a train is not having to debase yourself like an airport? Anyways, the Barcelona suburban network is interesting for a few different reasons. First off, instead of S numbers, the 12 lines have instead used R numbers, not too dissimilar from what used to be done on the SEPTA network in Philly. The craziest part here, though, is that this network is actually two different, completely incompatible networks of two totally different operators and set of standards. The operators here are Renfe, who uses wide Iberian gauge tracks on most of their lines, and Catalan State Railway operator FGC, who mostly uses narrow meter gauge tracks. The lines under Renfe Operadora are lines R1 through R4, along with R7 and R8. As ticketing is compatible between the two though, the FGC numbers are mixed in a bit, with those being lines R5 and R6. Now, if you've counted, you'll notice that's only 8 lines. There are 2 additional special lines on both networks. On the Renfe networks, there are actually 3 different variants of the R2 line, which heads to the airport. Fittingly, these are called R2 North, R2 South, and just R2. This is partially because of how trains are routed through Barcelona. Renfe has control of 2 main tunnels. Trains in the long distance routes from the south heading into Barcelona all terminate at Barcelona Sun Station. However, there are also respective eastern and western tunnels. The eastern tunnel is used exclusively for the S trains, while the western tunnel is used by regional trains and, oddly enough, also the R2. Meanwhile, in the FGC network, both the R5 and R6 have express variants, respectively called the R50 and R60. If this sounds a bit confusing to you, I promise you aren't the only one. Actually, a few years back, it was decided that both networks will eventually be merged together under one brand new operator, unifying the operations and perhaps easing future expansions. But as for when this will be done, your guess is as good as mine. Staying on the Iberian Peninsula, let's head from Spain to Portugal. Yes. Oh, that's my computer. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you may remember either the video where I rode a bunch of Swiss trains at like 3 in the morning, or the one where I used Germany's Deutschland ticket to travel from Basel, Switzerland to Kreusa, Denmark. Well, if you're curious as to why I was at Zurich Airport late at night,
I'm at Zurich Airport and it's fucking cold.
it's because for the several days before that, I had been a speaker at a games industry conference in Cascais, Portugal, near Lisbon. This is the part where I get to brag about being able to shoot the shit with John Romero. Yeah, the Doom guy. So, fun fact about trains in Portugal. Did you know I think they're pretty neat? I went to this cafe near the train station in Cascais and bought an entire cake for only a couple bucks. I thought they were just selling me a slice, so I ended up drinking coffee and eating a whole cake while watching trains just do their thing in Cascais. Fun fact, by using this footage here, I think this trip also becomes a tax write-off. Anyway, welcome to the CP Urbanos de Lisboa, or as they officially call it in English, the Lisbon commuter rail network. But between length, frequencies, and amount of interlining, I think calling this commuter rail is perhaps underselling it. When I hear the term commuter rail, I think of like the type of crappy thing you see in the US where it's like you get 3 trains in the morning and 3 in the evening at peak, weekdays only. The way lines are laid out here kind of remind me of the New York subway, as while there are technically only 5 lines, there are multiple different services that operate on them, different trains, if you will. Some with frequencies as low as hourly, and some with frequencies as high as every 10 minutes. This is not the only suburban rail network in Portugal, nor is it even the longest, despite stretching a very respectable 165 kilometers in total length. No, the number 1 spot actually goes to Porto, which I haven't visited yet, and thus don't have footage to use as proof for the tax office. Before I go further in this one, I just want to mention that the Tyne-Wear Metro, along with being potentially more S-Bahn than traditional metro, has a very strict filming policy, which is to say, for the most part, they flat out don't allow it most of the time. So for this section, to occupy your TikTok-addled ADHD brains, here's gameplay from Subway servers in Minecraft while I flip through copyright-free images of this rail system. Jokes aside, I get it. I've met some rather intense foamers out there. People take railway photography way too seriously at times, and if you're into this hobby as I am, please be responsible. The Tyne-Wear Metro is centered around Newcastle in northeastern England, and this metro, S-Bahn? Stadtbahn? Honestly, it's been called many things besides the moniker they gave themselves of Metro. Some sources call it an overground, similar to the London Overground. The English Wikipedia page calls it an underground and overground light rail system. What a spaghetti salad of words. The German Wikipedia straight up calls it a Stadtbahn network, lumping it in with systems-bound cities such as Cologne and Frankfurt. I feel like calling it more S-Bahn, or at least more similar to Karlsruhe S-number tram trains, will take a big bit of arguing on my point, but bear with me. It's S-Bahn-esque at least, and also a good several people on my last S-Bahn networks outside of Germany video mentioned this. Also, hey look, I think this is my first time ever talking about the UK on the channel. Based around the Tyne River and the Wear River, big surprise, I know, with a name like Tyne-Wear Metro, this technically 2-line network stretches around 78 kilometers and uses standard gauge track, with heavy interlining on the trunk through Newcastle proper. Some maps of the network also show a third purple line, which I believe is more conventional regional rail, not too dissimilar in maps we'd see here in Germany, which include regional served cities with nearby tariff zones. There's also a planned extension to Washington. No, not that one. Not that one either. However, everything I've seen about progress on that has been case studies and feasibility tests, and honestly, I know how this stuff goes in the Anglosphere. It's not happening, is it? Some non-Newcastle stops of note here are the airport, the ferry stops at North and South Shields. The yellow line also reminds me a bit of the U3 route in Hamburg by being a spurred loop line, though the spur here is definitely much more pronounced than the one to Wandsbek Gartenstadt home in Hamburg. Much like Hamburg's U-Bahn, by the way, much of the Tyne-Wear is actually above ground, with only 9 stations going underground. What also feels very S-Bahn core to me, which is a term I just made up and I hope to see on a Wikipedia article soon, is how this metro came to be, which is to say mostly by repurposing old British rail alignments. That's not dissimilar to say the S-Bahn Mittelelbe or even the southern S5 branch of the Hamburg S-Bahn back in Germany, heading to my town of Stade. Indeed, much like on the S5 branch, where the S-Bahn runs alongside regional trains, on the Tyne-Wear Metro, trains share trackage with national rail trains from Pilau to Sunderland. Rolling stock on the Metro, S-Bahn, whatever, proper also throws a fork into the whole S-Bahn argument, I know. The older rolling stock dates back to when the system went into operation in 1980 and was simply just referred to as Tyne-Wear Metro cars, and really remind me of some of the trains on the Berlin S-Bahn network. However, the newer rolling stock, which started going to service in December 2024, is actually based on Stadler's Metro train platform, same as some of the newer rolling stock on the Berlin U-Bahn. Perhaps much of the Stadtbahn tram train or Belgian pre-metro is an in-between of a tram and S-Bahn or tram and heavy rail metro. Maybe Tyne-Wear is basically described as being the in-between of an U-Bahn and an S-Bahn. Things in life are rarely so binary, aren't they? Honorable mentions today are Budapest, Madrid, Kiev, Moscow, and I also saw one viewer say that Glasgow may fit the bill as well. They at the very least have 2 separate city center tunnels. All of those I think can have it argued that they are or aren't S-Bahn networks as well. What do you mean people are claiming Dallas has an S-Bahn? What the hell? Are they high? I'm sorry the bulk of this video has been so Europe focused, while I've also heard arguments as well about covering Taipei or Mumbai, for instance. I don't feel like I know enough about trains in Asia to talk about them, and I feel like I need more info than just what an afternoon of research can provide to discuss the rail networks, or ideally, much like, for example, in the case of Portugal, just the ability to visit there and see so for myself. Before we end off today, I just want everyone to know that I also last year and earlier this year went to Dublin and to Rotterdam and Vermont, and speaking of Canada, Montreal needs to invest more in EXO, and also I went to Tonder in Denmark and